So today we're with Nicola Hanefeld talking about her research. She's just finished her PhD at the University of Hull, looking at women in the postpartum period and their use of the Alexander technique. So that's women who've had babies up to the first year, in the first year of birth. So we heard a little bit about your first study in the previous video, and today we're going to hear about your second study. So I wonder if you could start by just giving us the kind of background to this study.
Yes, well, because of the pandemic, we had to move online, so that was a major influence, and that was quite exciting to do. It is a small-scale feasibility study looking at how women without prior experience of the Alexander technique, their perceptions of a postpartum self-care package based or drawing on the principles of the Alexander technique. Yeah.
And that was following on from your first study where you found some really, that women found the Alexander technique helped them enormously, or the people you interviewed.
Yes, so the findings of study 1 flowed into study 2, and the main thing about study 2 was using this finding that semi-supine was incredibly important for women's lives and for their well-being. So that was a central part of study 2, the small-scale feasibility study.
So it was a kind of taking the elements from the first one, putting them together, and, well, because of COVID, delivering them online to women who hadn't experienced Alexander technique before. Do you want to maybe look at the slides and just remind us what the research question was?
Yes, in a nutshell, so a mixed methods feasibility study, meaning that we used qualitative interviews to understand women's perceptions of this online self-care package for postpartum women based on the Alexander technique. But we also used a Likert questionnaire. Online, I've already said, due to COVID, 16 participants, of which 15 sent back their consent forms, 73% completion rate. And the main finding was that for the women, the package was easy to use, acceptable and appropriate. But the interesting thing from our point of view was the impact on well-being. And the very interesting thing I found was, for them, the biggest challenge was taking time for themselves to do semi-supine. So moving on, that is the question: what are women's perceptions of the self-care package based on the Alexander technique and its effect on certain aspects of their postpartum well-being? And that was also based on what we had in the first study, the working conditions. There's things that happen in the postpartum that don't happen in other phases of life. You're recovering from birthing, you might have certain perineal pain, you often have back pain, you're exhausted because you're feeding in the night, infant care at night, you're carrying and holding a baby, so all these things going on. And this was the, we included these questions to this aspect in the Likert questionnaire. So the components of the self-care package, very important. How were we giving input, sorry, not impact, the impact comes later. I sorted out different videos for women to watch online. There was a very good general introduction to the Alexander technique, that is a TED talk. And then colleagues from America, I linked to their videos on anatomy and effortless breathing. And then I also made a video for the participants where I was using a doll to show if you're holding your baby, you don't have to pull up your shoulders, and when you pick it up, you can think up. So that was available to them as well. And then 2 videos on semi-supine constructive rest practice. And these videos taken together, they were about just over 30 minutes. So that was the first input, was watching videos. Then I sent them information with these images from Cohen et al.'s, it was called Lighten Up. And I also demonstrated that in the video that I made. So this thought of relax, pull up, and effortless or lighten up. They got that per post. And then, as I've already said, the main intervention was they were asked if they participated to do constructive rest 14 times, 10 to 15 minutes every day. And I guided them. I sent them, they were all on WhatsApp. I sent them a video, not a video, an audio. So they were also listening while they'd understood how to do constructive rest from the videos, but I talked them through it. So that was like 3 minutes. And those were the components. So it was the videos, the printed material, doing the constructive rest, and listening to what you do with yourself or what you don't do with yourself when you do lie down.
So in actual fact, you weren't kind of interacting one-to-one with them online or even one to a group. It was a set package that they could access in their own time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Just moved over because the suns came out. This is where we recruited, all online, obviously. Net Mums, Mumsnet, a local Mumbler group, Hull and East Riding, obviously the Society of Teachers of the Alexander Technique, but also internally the University of Hull. And there was a lot of interest within a couple of weeks, over 750 hits. And I recently checked while I was writing up 3,500 hits. So there was a great deal of interest, I think we can firmly say, on the idea of joining a group on the Alexander Technique, on a self-care package based on it.
That is an interesting finding in itself, isn't it? Just how much interest there is. Yeah.
Yeah, that quite excited me, I think. Yeah.
So
that's how we collected data. I've already mentioned that we did a Likert-based questionnaire with 9 items after they completed their 14 times constructive rest. And part of this Likert questionnaire was a free text response at the end. Do you want to add anything? And that was analyzed with thematic analysis. And then also with 5 people, I did semi-structured interviews. Perhaps you can explain what thematic analysis does, what it aims to do.
Well, I suppose it does what it says. You read and you reread, you become very familiar with the text, and then you draw out themes, both from within each text and across them. So the kind of major elements that appear in the text. Yep. And then working with individual pieces of text, but then kind of accruing the themes across them.
So this is about who participated, as I mentioned. 19 people were interested. Prior experience had to be excluded, but I did send them the videos, so they still got, you know, they were still in on it, but they just couldn't take part in the data collection. 16 women accepted, 15 consent forms received. During the study, 1 woman had to be excluded due to health reasons, and 11 actually finished. And then we can already move to the questionnaire results. And the main finding was people found it easy to use, acceptable, and appropriate. So though we had no prior experience of doing something like that, we kind of hit the nail on the head, perhaps because we were using the findings from study 1. And the most interesting finding as well was it actually changed how they looked after themselves and impacted their sense of well-being. And then looking at the free text responses, which 10 from 11 people participated in, they added 10 from 11 participants added something. And as I say, I did with 5 participants, short interviews, very, very interesting stuff. That time was a major issue for these postpartum women. It was, I think, this prioritizing for themselves was incredibly difficult. And it was clear that what the Alexander Technique, inviting them to do constructive rest, was interacting with themselves and not with their baby and their household and partners and everything else. But here am I, being with myself. And when they did get to doing it, switching off was difficult. Their mind wandering was an issue. And the third aspect was that was a barrier to doing this was also the COVID situation. Some people had 3 kids at home and a husband, so they just weren't alone. So those were the major barriers to using the package. But the findings, when they got through these barriers, they really profited. So the facilitator, that they felt better, that facilitated carrying on with using constructive rest. And this just to be this, it was kind of so joyful. Some people were saying how wonderful it is just to be. Obviously, well, not obviously, but that was a finding. Some were saying they're losing shoulder pain, neck tension, headaches, back pain was being reduced. I thought a change in concept of what productivity was very interesting. One woman said lying down and having a rest is being productive. Now that is not a thing in our society that is, you know, average understanding of what productivity is. Productivity for us is doing. And she was saying that being is productive because she was feeling better. Further facilitators were that the material was easily available, but I think also that they got this input, and how they integrated this input, this awareness of drawing on the Alexander technique, that was up to them, apart from doing the constructive rest. So it was no doing exercises. I think mums have enough to do, and this being able to be while doing constructive rest, and otherwise it was just remembering, oh, when I hold my baby, I don't have to pull my shoulders up. I can let them go. That engaged people's awareness and was a different approach from many, many other studies in this field. So I'll move on to the last slide, which summarizes beautifully, I think. I think it is something the midwives could tell you about. It could be beneficial. It's almost like giving women permission more than anything to rest after they have a baby. I think that's a problem, because what people say to you is take all the help you can, but you don't really want your mother-in-law coming in and folding your washing. Doing this would be more empowering to women.
So a lot in there, and a lot of change for women. I wonder whether there's anything you can say about sort of wider applicability. So what are your thoughts about what we could learn from this for delivering Alexander technique, I suppose,
Well, I think many colleagues in the worldwide Alexander technique community are discovering practically day in, day out how much we can convey without hands-on work. And I personally believe it's a huge opportunity for us to become more widely known. And I hope the community takes up. I know not everybody's happy with it, but that's my belief. I think we should move forward. And this small-scale, modest feasibility study does clearly show how people have benefited.
There are arguments about what is Alexander technique and what isn't, and is this, and obviously you don't get the same from this as you do from, you know, 20 one-to-one lessons with hands-on work, but there's a question of how we can use those principles, in what way we can benefit people with them. It's benefited these people, and it's doable, and that's hugely important.
And it's the amount that how they benefited. They were saying in the interviews they were feeling calmer, more refreshed, more energy, feeling more relaxed, more patient even. Somebody was feeling more in control, more centered, more self-contact, feeling lighter. This is something we know from Alexander lessons. But she felt lighter, and another person said they were, on the day she practiced, they were definitely better days. And I think we would be a bit unintelligent if we weren't moving on in this realm. I mean, the two things can work parallel. Right? People can take lessons and do online work. It's not one against each other.
And I think that, you know, that move to permission to give themselves time is huge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lesley, as well.